Welcome to the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 105.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Welcome back to the Veterinary Project Podcast. Dr. Michael Bugg, Dr. Jonathan Light, episode 100 and a lot. We're doing pretty well. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic, Jonathan. I like that. It is 100 and a lot.
It seems relevant for the number of podcasts that we've recorded as of late, and we've got another great one with a returning guest, Dr. Ryan Appleby. But before we do that and get into that, what's shaking in your world?
Well, I am on standby to go help with the family harvest. So that's the month of September is always very busy. Recently, I had a pretty cool experience shooting the cover for my book that will be coming out at some point. I'm going to quit saying dates because it just keeps going on and on the marketing side. But it was pretty fun shooting the cover.
Well, tell us more about that. What does that encompass for somebody that has no idea what shooting a cover for a book looks like?
Yeah, so I still can't share the title because we need this like ISBN or something, whatever. But I can tell you that on the cover of the book is a cat because I love cats. And so Rosalie had actually lined up family photos for us, around like we just wanted some photos with Riley and then her maternity for upcoming baby bump here. So we go out to this acreage to shoot some photos, and it just turns out to be a cat sanctuary. So the lady's mom, it's her acreage, and I've never seen a setup like this, right? Like outdoor towers all over the place. The cats can go inside, outside, different sheds, like they have their own playhouses. It was unreal. Like I was in heaven there as like a cat guy.
And you didn't know this before you went out there?
I had no clue. Like, no, we're just going to like somewhere to shoot family photos, right? So there wasn't like a ton of cats. It was like 5 cats living the best possible life in the world. So I get chatting with the photographer, and I've been working on the cover, and the company I'm working with has been providing me cover options, but none of them have really landed, right? Like I'm like, and it just felt really lacking. Like I was like, I put a lot of work into this book, and I'm going to roll out a cover that I'm kind of like meh on. And so I've just been sitting on it. And then I just asked the lady, I was like, so I'm working on a book. This is what I'm picturing for the cover. Like, do you think we could make that happen? Like, could we do a photo shoot? And I like showed her what I was picturing. And she's like, I have a good friend that has 2 ragdoll cats that would be perfect for this. And she showed me pictures of the cats, and I was like, oh yeah, I was like, that cat would be excellent. So she sets it up. It was a week or 2 later, and we go to this lady's house with her big, beautiful cat. So Felix was my cover model. Felix the cat was the one that we chose. He's got these big blue eyes. And I don't want to give too much away, but we had to like, Felix had to get wet for the photo shoot. So, and very cooperative cat. So we got him kind of all bathed up and shot some cover photos. So I'm really happy about it because now it's like unique. It's just like, it's a one of one. It's not some stock photo floating around the internet. So everyone can be on the lookout for Felix the cat making his modeling debut.
What a great story. And to watch you tell it for anybody that's watching on YouTube or otherwise, you just see Mike smiling, just grinning ear to ear.
It's just funny how things work out, right? Like I was kind of like, I gotta finalize this cover, but it's just not where I want it. And to be honest, I just like put it to the side for a while. And it's just so funny how sometimes waiting and things work out for the best. Because when that all happened, I was like, this is excellent. Like just the story around it. So it was cool.
Perfect. We've shared that with a couple of candidates that we wanted to bring on with Mosaic as of late, and for whichever reason it hasn't worked. And then yet, when you wait a little bit, when you have patience, even better candidates or opportunities arise. And it sounds like that's exactly what's happened with your situation here. That's a great story. Awesome. Yeah. Fun. Well, let's get into it. We have Dr. Ryan Appleby joining us today, an adept title, I think, The Dangers and Promise of AI in Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Ryan Appleby, he is an assistant professor of diagnostic imaging at the Ontario Veterinary College. He completed his veterinary school and rotating internship at OVC, and then completed an imaging internship in San Diego and a residency in diagnostic imaging at NC State University in Raleigh, North Carolina. He was boarded by the American College of Veterinary Radiologists in 2019 and rejoined the team at OVC. His research interests include the use of artificial intelligence in veterinary imaging, clinical applications of advanced ultrasound technologies as well. He's passionate about teaching and started the website OBVet in 2021 to provide global access to high-quality veterinary educational content in a micro-learning format. This is the man. He has lots of opinions on where AI can or cannot possibly go in veterinary medicine. We're all learning in this area. Hopefully, this is a really informative episode for you and for all of us as we go down this path of AI in veterinary medicine. Without further ado, Dr. Ryan Appleby. Dr. Ryan Appleby, thank you very much for joining us. We are happy to have you back on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. It's good to be back with you. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited.
As always, I'm excited when we have our guests on. This one, especially, one, because I'm pretty naive to this world and we want to learn about it. And number two, it's one that we've been speaking with you since day one about having you on the podcast in relation to AI, the present state, future, and your perspectives on it. Before we get into this exhilarating talk, tell us a little bit about yourself for those that have not listened to previous podcasts with you as a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ryan Appleby. I'm a veterinary radiologist and I work at the Ontario Veterinary College. I am also the co-founder of OB Veterinary Education, which is an online education platform for veterinarians. And pertinent to this topic, I have an interest, and particularly a research interest, in artificial intelligence and its use for veterinary medicine, and specifically for me, veterinary radiology. So huge topic in our world, and something that is up and coming. I've had the opportunity to work with some colleagues in the computer sciences department here at the University of Guelph. We've partnered together to make a lab and have some research projects on the go. I've also had the opportunity to get involved with the ACVR Education and Development Committee, as well as the upcoming special issue from Veterinary Radiology and Ultrasound on AI. So I am not a computer scientist. I'm not a world-renowned AI expert by any means, but I am a very interested party with, similar to the last time we spoke, very strong opinions.
And that's what we're here for today, because when it comes to AI, there is, like you say, technology that is affecting us in veterinary medicine now. And it's incumbent upon all of us to know where that affects our day-to-day practice and our interactions with our clients, etc. And so our goal, I think, with this podcast is to really take it at a beginner's level. What the heck is artificial intelligence as it relates to veterinary medicine or beyond, so that we get that scope from somebody that's in the know. And then secondly, dive down into some of those opinions versus facts, and let's work at it from a standpoint of how this would affect our listeners that are on today. So starting off, Ryan, I guess a place to start would be, what is artificial intelligence? What is this thing we've been hearing more and more about in veterinary medicine and beyond, when it goes to, here's AI and the future, here's the world that is going to change due to AI, here's why computers are taking over the world? What is all of this nonsense?
I like that. Computers taking over the world. It's a good way to think about it, or an interesting way to think about it. at its basic level, AI is the development of computer systems that are doing tasks that would normally require human level intelligence. And it's a broad umbrella term. It includes a number of things that we have kind of come to start to use interchangeably, at least as people talk about it colloquially. So you'll hear terms like machine learning or deep learning. Those are types of AI or subcategories of AI that folks, generally speaking, especially when it comes to some of the initial applications, which is veterinary imaging or imaging in general, will almost refer to them interchangeably. So, AI can do a number of different things. It has a wide range of applications and can be applied kind of across the board for medical systems, and whether it's diagnosis, triage, a variety of different things. And what we're starting to see in veterinary medicine is the adoption of AI for different tasks. And as it particularly relates to veterinary imaging, the adoption of AI as a computer-aided detection system, so using machines to detect things within radiographs. It's kind of one of the starting points for AI in vet med. So, yeah.
Okay, there is a lot to jump on there. So diagnosis, triage, tasks, computer detected diagnoses, or not even diagnoses, but recognition in the radiology field. When you're saying AI or machine learning, and again, that's another term that's just used all over the place these days, and you have somebody in front of you that says, what is this? Like, how do I take all these different options and subcategories and frame it for a veterinarian, let's say, that's saying, this is now affecting me in veterinary medicine? What do you say it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI, kind of in its most basic, simplest form, is a computer system that is designed to do tasks which would ordinarily require human intelligence. And so that can be applied across a wide range of areas. But it's those computer systems that are not just simply programmed to do one set of things, but to actually learn and do tasks that require that intelligence. I think for listeners who might not be as familiar with some of that underlying concepts and ideas, we'll touch on them a little bit in this episode, but I think a good idea might be to pause the pod and go and just read a brief article on it. So a colleague and I published in JAVMA 2 short articles that are geared towards novices in AI. And they give kind of an overview explanation of the underlying principles of it. So we talk about different types of AI, different ways in which AI is trained and created, and then some of the challenges associated with it, which I think is a lot of what I want to chat with you here about today, is some of those challenges and things that folks need to think about when they're deciding on whether or not to use AI in their practices now, today.
Excellent. So we're going to have those articles posted in the notes section of this podcast. For any of you that want to go take a pause on the podcast and go delve, that is where they are. And thanks for providing those, Ryan, to us ahead of time. So then moving forward with it in terms of where we see AI in veterinary medicine, what are some areas where AI already exists and people might not even recognize that or be aware that AI is in their everyday practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess the first thing I want to do is just take a quick step back and say that AI is in your life every day, right? So the things that are happening on your phone, the autofill of things in emails and stuff like that, spam detection in emails, all of these are using AI in the background. Large companies that are selling you things online that say things like customers who bought this also bought blank. That's also AI. So AI is operating in the background in a ton of different areas and really impacting our lives every day. So we're using it in the practice in many different ways, right? Like if you're typing something in a medical record and you get an autofill, that's already AI that's trying to make your life a little bit easier to finish that. But then from a medical standpoint, the places where AI is going to be adopted first and most easily are places that are heavy in data. And one of the areas that is super heavy in data is medical imaging. So it's one of the places where AI has been adopted first in human medicine. And it's also one of the areas we're seeing it here. We're seeing veterinary radiology or veterinary imaging being one of the first sort of pathways for artificial intelligence in veterinary medicine. It's not the only one, though. We're also seeing it in other areas that have imaging, so cytology, histopathology. There is AI being done there. And then we can also see it through just general medical records. So there are AI systems, including natural language processing, so systems which can take the written word and extract their meaning from it, which are able to help, identify and analyze medical records as well, or even things like blood work, where we have values and data there that we can start to use AI to do different tasks that we want it to do, whether it's prediction, classification, and other kinds of activities. So those are the main places that we're seeing AI right now in vet med. And only a few commercial entities are really out there. A lot of it is still in the research area, but veterinary radiology specifically has a number of commercial entities that are starting to make a foray into practice and are starting to be used by clinics.
Okay. That's a great overview. Great summary as well, too. And a couple of areas there, specifically when you're chatting about cytology, pathology, and as well, the data rich area that is practice management software and medical records for some of the larger companies. It's huge. Yep. Data driven. So appreciate that perspective. Getting into it a little bit then in terms of AI in the clinic and what you're seeing day to day. Let's jump into some of the challenges, opportunities, and successes that are happening. Before we go into those three pieces, though, I do want to ask your opinion. Do you feel that AI-driven technologies in veterinary medicine are moving forward faster because of our current veterinary shortage of professionals in the industry? And is that related to similar facets in humans medicine when we're seeing radiologists and or the lack thereof? Would love your opinion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's my opinion, and I don't know that I'm aware of any strong data suggesting exactly what is driving the push, but I think it's a combination of those things. So a part of it is the need for radiologists. There aren't enough radiologists to cover the number of images that are seen in practice. Yep. And the cost of that is also fairly substantial to cover that. So not everything can get to a radiologist as it sits right now. And so I think that most veterinarians are operating from a place of wanting to get to the highest level of practice that's possible within reason and within financial constraints and things like that. And part of that involves oftentimes having an extra set of eyes on those radiographs. So I guess I talk a lot about radiographs in part because that's my area, and also because of its, being the first thing that's being deployed here. Radiography is quite hard. It's quite challenging. And so I think there's a need from practitioners, or at least a perceived need from me, to get assistance with those, right? We see it in different ways. There's some folks using AI. There's some folks sending everything to a radiologist. There's some folks posting things on Facebook groups or in VIN or whatever the case is, to try to get assistance in those pieces. And that's because it's really challenging. It's a very difficult thing to grasp when you're not spending every day thinking about it.
Absolutely.
So I think that that's part of it, right? So there's this need to help patients by getting interpretations of images, in part due to a specialist shortage, and then in part due to a veterinarian shortage. There's less time in the day. You're trying to see more patients. You want assistance in those things. Yep. And then coupled with that is this rapidly advancing technology and a level of commercial interest, which sees opportunity there. So, there are groups that see opportunity here to kind of fill that need from a commercial standpoint. It is, I guess, in my opinion, they're looking at it and they're thinking this is a money-making opportunity for us, and perhaps even a translational opportunity, right? So there's huge opportunities in human medicine for artificial intelligence, where we could be using the veterinary space as a little bit of a runway for operations or not operations like surgeries, but for models and AI algorithms in human medicine to help give those companies runway or to help train those models. And so all of that, I think, is playing into things. And I think that impacts how it's being delivered and how it's being sold to clinics and what opportunities are available for clinics as well.
Okay. A lot to unwrap with that and appreciate your opinion and appreciate your perspective, which is, from a place of knowledge and a place of experience and watching this technology unfold. From your perspective, and you hear it out there, and this is one side of the equation, does AI and or computer generated learning, etc., take over radiologists to the point that there are not radiologists in future because this can be more efficient and do better?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think the true answer is we have no idea. For me, the answer is no. And what it's going to be more of is that, this is something that was said by a radiologist on the human side. And it's something that we sort of co-opted for our paper in JAVMA as well. I think that people who use AI are going to replace those who don't. And so what we need to do is find a way to be using AI in our practice that is, ethically sound in the best interest of our patients and is going to improve patient care and patient outcomes in the long run. So I personally don't think that it's going to replace radiologists. I think there will be a role for radiologists. But I could certainly be wrong on that. There are folks out there who do believe that computer systems will replace radiologists, at least as we know them now.
Okay, I love that comment, Mike.
Well, I would maybe jump in at this point and August/September 2022. Where do you see us and AI? And let's stick with radiology. Like, where is it at currently? In your opinion?
I think that's a really great question and a really complex question because there's sort of two sides of it. There's the side that says that AI is currently available for you to deploy in your practice right now to interpret radiographs and provide a computer-aided diagnosis for a variety of abnormalities. And there's my view on it, which is AI is not there. So you can do that. You can get those systems employed. And to me, there's a lot lacking there. There's a lot of information behind what's happening there lacking. And there's things that veterinarians, practice managers, practice owners, groups need to be thinking about before they're deploying these systems in practice. Because I think that we're opening ourselves up to a little bit of danger, a little bit of concern. And I think that's the thing that I want folks to start thinking about.
Yep. So let's talk about that then. And it was a great segue. It's like Mike set you up. It's perfect.
Wonderful.
In terms of, we are talking about the pre-recording. You're saying, okay, before a veterinarian, an owner, a group wants to jump down some of the available resources that are in play in veterinary medicine, specific to radiology right now, what are some specific things that you think they need to think about first? What do they need to ask? Because we need your support on that, because sometimes we don't know the right questions to ask.
For sure. So I think the first thing that's important to think about is looking at where it's been done already, right? So we know that AI is being used by people. And to me, it's really important to point out that the AI that's being used, so if you go to a hospital where their radiology team is using AI for something, the AI that they're using is considered something called software as a medical device. So at least in the USA, that's an FDA regulation that says that this is software as a medical device, and therefore it is subject to a level of scrutiny, and it is accredited by FDA approval. So there are some underlying pieces that are sitting under this that say, okay, this software needs to meet a benchmark level before we're going to let it be deployed to act as a medical device in people. That does not exist for veterinary medicine. There's absolutely none of that. So anyone who comes across, Ryan, Mike, and John's pulmonary nodule detection system, that is available on the market right now. We just did it. It's there. Now, it's not very good because we don't have any data or any software to do anything with it, but we could, right? We could just put it out there. There's absolutely nothing controlling it. And obviously there's going to be some market factors that are going to direct that. If we sell that to you and then there's nothing there, you're going to know and you won't be able to do it. But there are a lot of factors here that should be thought about even for systems that do exist. And a lot of those things are pieces that are complex and challenging, and they're especially for groups that are deploying AI and wanting to maintain some level of proprietary information about what they're doing, which I completely understand. I get that. It's going to be important for businesses to be able to do that. But there's a lack of information about the systems that currently exist here in August 2022 out on market. And the kind of information that I'm talking about is everything from how that system was created all the way up to how it performs in your clinic. And between those two ends of the spectrum is a huge range of things that need to be thought of, need to be considered, and need to be given to the public, in my opinion, or the users, in my opinion, so that they can make an informed decision about what they're doing, and they can then decide whether or not that's something that should be deployed to their clients, and be able to communicate to their clients about why we're deploying this. We're going to use this AI to help with our radiographic detection. We're going to charge you for that because it's a system. And we know that that's going to be good for you because here's a swath of data. And that middle part is what's missing. We have the systems, we have the implementation, and there's a huge middle part that's lacking.
So in the simplest terms, when we want to bring in a new parasiticide into the practice, one of the first things we do is ask about the data that's behind the scenes related to how efficacious this product is, what's the safety margin or the safety label that's associated with it, where and when we can use it, and what expectations are. If I'm hearing correctly, you're saying that middle point related to all that data is not there?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, so I think that there needs to be something, right? The example I gave, like the facetious example of R3's pulmonary nodule detection, that's not there because we never did it. I'm not saying that these companies haven't done it, right? They've gone out, they've obviously created systems that work and function. What we don't know is how they work, whether or not the fact that they work actually impacts the clinical decisions for these patients in a positive or a negative way, and if they're going to work the same way in every environment. So when we think about them creating this, so let's use pulmonary nodule detection as an example, right? How we get to that point is going to be really important. So if we create that, we need to create a set of data, which is radiographs. And that set of data needs to at least be shown to the people who are using it so they understand what that looks like, right?
Yep.
They need to see that those are radiographs of dogs, right? That's going to be important. If we want to detect these in dogs, we want to know that at a very basic level that it works in dogs in general. But then beyond that, personally, I would want to know things like, okay, are these all dogs that were radiographed at an academic institution by somebody who was like a VTS in diagnostic imaging and therefore like had perfect positioning? Were they all sedated dogs for this and therefore have perfect positioning? Or are they a majority of what radiographs look like in practice, which is like the best we can possibly get with the limitations we have, which might be obliquity, it might be a whole dog instead of just the thorax, it might be, any number of things. It might be 2 views instead of 3, it might be 1 view instead of 2. So where does it work? What are the limitations of that? What was that data set that it was trained on? And the more heterogeneous that data set, probably the better. And even better than that would be heterogeneity from different institutions. So let's put together something that is a wide range of types of radiographs, positioning of radiographs from different places.
And if those groups or companies, et cetera, was able to provide that data, that middle piece, what would that mean then for you, Ryan? Would you be fully on board with this integration into clinics? And if not, where do you see the challenges or issues still arising?
So, okay, so I guess there's 2 pieces there.
Okay.
That thing that I just listed is
Yes.
like step 0.1 of getting to the end result, right? So
Yep.
they would need to give us that. Then they would need to give us their test systems and show us that this worked within this environment. So we tested these radiographs on X number, and this is the accuracy, this is the specificity, this is the sensitivity. They would then need to show that these work in external environments as well. So we tested them on our testing set, and then we took them and we tested them externally. And here are the metrics associated with that. And then they would need to go and say, and here's how we're going to continue to validate this within the environment in which it's operating in. And so across all of those, I think that gets us to a decent point of maybe we can start to think about deploying these in practice. But even there, I think we need to stop and ask a question, which is, where are we deploying it in practice? How are we deploying it in practice? And who is it benefiting, right? Yeah. To me, we need to prove that this is benefiting the patient. So in your example of parasiticides, we are going to give parasiticides to animals because we know that there is a proven benefit of eliminating the parasitic burden in that patient. That is something we know we need to do from the health of a patient perspective. I don't think we've proven that using AI to evaluate radiographs is going at the level of a general practice or even at the level of a radiologist yet, is going to benefit patient outcomes. We haven't proven that.
There's no proof of that on the human side either?
So there are proof of things like, so in people, they're using it very differently, right? They have a set of use cases which are designed by radiologists to identify very specific things. Things like pulmonary thromboemboli, things like intracranial hemorrhage. And these systems are being used in a variety of ways to aid radiologists, perhaps with triage of their work lists. So it passed through a system that identifies pulmonary thromboemboli on CT or intracranial hemorrhage on CT, and then it could bump those to the top of the work list, helping radiologists identify those things. There is some proof that that does aid in the outcomes for those patients. It does identify things or help radiologists. They've done studies to show that. On the veterinary side, we don't use it in that way. And we have not done any studies that say, okay, if I deploy my AI in the clinic, at the end point of this, I'm going to have a better patient outcome. There's no literature supporting that, right? So I think we need some evidence-based medicine to support that. So to me, that's part of that huge middle portion that's missing. So it's everything from how it was created, how it was tested, and then finally, how is that going to impact our patients that is absent from the discussion of just deploying it. In part, I think going back to your point of we all need help with radiographs. And so we're just kind of doing it because it seems novel, it seems unique, but we're not treating it the same way we would any other test, right? Mike's ELISA test that identifies cancer is going to be given a huge amount of scrutiny. If Mike just comes to you and is like, it does it, I swear, put the drop of blood on there, it does it. Show me the data. And if you haven't shown me the data, why? I don't know.
So it's such a confusing area. And Mike, sorry, I'm cutting you off quickly here. Because we do that for everything else. So why aren't we doing this for this area? It seems strange to me.
I don't know. If you can answer that question, I would be super happy. Because I spend most of my days thinking about that. Why do we do this for everything else? And this is the one area that we're like, yeah, no, it's fine. The computer's got our back.
So, I mean, that's a really interesting question. And I know, Ryan, you posed that to us in our pre-recording a couple of weeks ago, and it's kind of been bugging me as well. So I've been thinking about it. Now, this is my opinion. Like there's nothing backing this. These are some things I've thought of as, because I'm in that camp where it's like, I hear the word AI and immediately I'm like, oh, it is smarter than me, but like it is, it's the best.
Okay, and let's stop right there because I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions about AI. The AI can never be smarter than the person who programmed it. Because especially for this, right? So there's certain versions of AI that can detect things that we can't. Yeah. So for example, radiomics is a type of AI where we're going to identify a signature within an image that could identify things that humans can't, right? So that's something that they can tell that we can't. But when it comes to computer-aided diagnosis or classification, it will never be better than the human because the humans are the ones who trained it, right? So the accuracy of the people that is training that is the maximum accuracy that you can expect out of that system. You can never expect the AI to do something that you yourself are not able to do. So I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's something that I hear all the time that is a complete misnomer about what we're dealing with, right? And who that human was that trained it, that goes back into that middle section that's missing from most of these companies because the information isn't out there. Who is that human who trained it? Is it one radiologist? Is it two radiologists? Is it zero radiologists and 5 practitioners who just like radiology? Where did it all come from? And knowing that is going to be super important to decide on how we're, making that diagnosis. So
no, and I mean that was an excellent piece to it, because for me, the answer I came up with is I'm so biased around computers because for whatever X number of years or decades, I've been using my computer. Now I know this isn't AI, but I'm on Excel spreadsheets, typing numbers in and bang, it's added them up. And I was like, it did it faster and better than I can, but that's a completely different set of data, right? Like adding numbers, there's not really variables there. Like that's math, right? So for me, that my answer would be like, I've been so biased by watching computers develop, coming through university and into life now. And then I have a huge gap in understanding AI. Like I'm just sitting here absorbing, being like the dumbest person in the room and learning. And when I have that gap, my brain just fills it in. And it said, okay, over here with math and an Excel spreadsheet, computers are very good. So it must be true over here also. So that's what's happening in my brain. So I'm just sort of saying this out loud for anyone else that may be in that camp.
Totally fair. Totally fair, right? I think that makes a ton of sense, but it's why sort of the cart has gotten in front of the horse, so to speak, right? We've jumped the gun on this middle step that to me is like so imperative that we just slow down, think about this, start to discuss it at the level of our organization, start to discuss it in terms of like groups and practice groups and things like that. Like, how are we going to do this and how do we want it to come out? Yeah. And it's a huge, huge challenge, but absolutely, like I can get why you would think that, and I can get where that conclusion comes from, but ultimately, like we need to prove that that works. And that's especially true of like this in particular, right? This is a medical diagnosis. It has massive implications. Like think, for example, of an AI that identifies those pulmonary nodules and it does it incorrectly and the patient is euthanized for that. Now, probably, there's going to be a couple intervening steps in there that ideally would help out, and we're going to treat the patient, not the output of the AI. But you can imagine a world in which the diagnosis from the AI impacts a patient or impacts a client financially at the very least, that are going to be really important, which is not the same impact as when my phone autocorrects a word to something I did not mean. That is an incredibly low stakes AI mistake compared to making the wrong diagnosis.
I'm so interested to understand then from the perspective of a radiologist, is this the radiologist saying, hey, radiologists are always going to be better than AI, some combination of the two, or as you said, the cart's before the horse. So this is already a runaway train that we really need to slow down. It's a really interesting dynamic.
I think it's going to be something in those middle two, right? So I think it's likely that at least for the foreseeable future, in most of my lifetime, a radiologist is going to be better than AI at a wide variety of things, right? We need to take not only the information on the images, but the patient history, the information from blood work and things like that, and we synthesize it, right? Which is very different than an AI saying, this probably has pulmonary nodules or this probably doesn't, 90% either way. Yep. So in terms of like full case synthesis, we've got a ways to go for that. Some combination of radiologists and AI is where I would love to see this kind of direct, right? I would love to see AI that can help triage cases so that the ones that, whether it's because of the signalman presenting complaint or the actual imaging findings are being triaged to a radiologist earlier, or AI that is going to help a radiologist manipulate images to make their job faster. So companies are already trying these things where they will deploy AI within the work system So say, for example, you send it to a teleradiology company, the images pop up, a year or two ago, those images would be in any orientation, just kind of how they came off your radiology system. Now, depending on who it is and what's being done, sometimes they'll be flipped, right? So they'll be presented to you in the correct hanging orientation. It only takes a few seconds off of the radiologist's job. But when you're talking about trying to meet the demand of the entire veterinary profession and a limited number of radiologists, that becomes huge, right? Or, radiology applications that are deployed to try to aid generating reports faster based on the information in the images. So I think that to me, that is where I would like to see AI deployed, is at the level of the radiologist. I admit that we're already at a point where AI is being deployed at the level of the general practitioner. And we probably need to find a way to work together to figure out where the best location is. But it seems like we've had an answer to a question, which is a foregone conclusion, that we're just going to deploy it at the level of the GP. And that's going to be what's best for the outcomes. And we use science every day. We use science to treat our patients. We need science to prove that that's the best outcome. And if it is, I will happily, step back and say, I was wrong about where it was best, and let's work together to make that the best for the best outcome of the patient. But it seems like these are things that are happening already without the science behind them to back it.
In the last couple of minutes, then, with the horse already out of the barn, and right now, as it sounds from your perspective, at quite a clip, quite a speed already out there into the world, what do you see as possible measures for slowing the horse down or ensuring that it is a proper horse that is attached to that cart? Man, that's some analogies.
I love the horse cart analogy. I'm not sure that I'm the first one to use it. I apologize. I think I probably heard it from someone else in this area, but I think it's a good question. And I don't know that I have a great answer to it. I think that the first thing to do is that I want to talk to as many people about this as possible. So, if you've listened to this and you're thinking to yourself, like, I want to deploy AI in my practice, send me an email. Just let's talk about this. Let's figure it out. Why do you want to deploy it in practice? What sort of things are you thinking about? So the first thing is, let's get education out there. Let's try and talk to people about what some of these challenges are. So that's why I wanted to chat with you today. And I'd be happy to chat with anyone else, on the side. I think that's the most important thing that we're going to do. Start to educate people at every level, right? From the level of the veterinarians who are going to be using it, the practice managers who are deploying it, the clinic groups or individual clinics who are using these services and making that decision, right? Maybe it is the right decision for that clinic. Maybe that's something they really need, but they need to understand all of the limitations associated with it. And they need to be able to communicate those limitations appropriately to their clients. Because without that, we're in a very difficult ethical gray area. So continuing education forward, I think, is a big thing. And then I think that, what we'd like to try and see over time is some development of some regulations around this, of what it's going to look like. An AI for use here should meet the following criteria. We should know what the data set is. We should know what the accuracy, sensitivity, specificity, F1 scores are. We should know what that looks like in multiple testing environments. We should know what that looks like, in a clinical utility setting. So I think there are a number of steps that ideally we could start to try and do as a profession to think about those things. So yeah.
Do you see that happening, Ryan? Do you see regulation coming into this area in veterinary medicine?
Like true regulation?
Yeah, true regulation.
No, I don't. I think that there will be likely position statements from different groups that come across. And I think that, what I can say, and I think I can say this, is that the ACVR is very heavily invested in this, and the ECVDI as well. So the colleges are heavily invested in this and want to see the best outcome for patients and for diagnostic imaging as a whole. And there are conversations at those levels about, what kind of recommendations can we make and things like that. But a true regulation at the level of the FDA that we see for humans is not going to exist in veterinary medicine.
Okay.
And so just like everything else that we do, right? Like I think pet food is a really interesting version of this, right? And it's something we talked about in our pre-recording. Pet food companies come in and say, you know, this food is best for this dog and this breed and all of these things. And as veterinarians, we're very good about saying to our clients, these are kind of romance claims. You know, we don't know that just because you have husky means it needs to eat this raw, grain-free, whatever diet. Like there's full and complete imbalance elsewhere. I think that we need to start to do similar things with AI, but it's targeted towards us in many instances, right? We need to think about what these kind of romance claims are towards the products, that they're accurate, that they're doing a good job or whatever, and think about how they're actually affecting us and where's the proof behind those claims.
Excellent. Well, we are at the end of our time together today. What I gather in summary from this conversation, which has been very enlightening, for a newbie, but somebody that has interest on the computer side, but no knowledge like you whatsoever, is we have a lot of learning to do. Also not allow companies or advances in technology just to move forward into your practice or otherwise without really doing the due diligence that we do with everything else. So why would this be any different? And Mike, I think your example was perfect as well too. Yeah, because it's real. We just assume, and we should not just assume ever.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
For people that want to get a hold of you and continue this conversation, because there are going to be those, how do they get a hold of you, Ryan?
Yeah, for sure. So I am on Twitter. I like Twitter. Appleby DVM at Appleby DVM is my Twitter handle. So you can get me there. You can email me, rappleby@uoguelph.ca or ryan@obvet.com. And I would say those are probably the two best ways to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much today for what's been a great education all around AI. And with that, as we do with all of our guests, what message would you like to share with the veterinary community?
Yeah, I think it's essentially the message that you were just sharing, kind of wrapping up there, which is there are a ton of considerations associated with deploying AI into your practice. And I think that it's really important to educate yourselves on what the AI is, what its limitations are, and what sort of data exists to support it from a very scientific and ideally peer-reviewed way that are going to support those things. And without that, I would be very cautious about how you deploy it. So again, I'm not advocating and saying, you know, this is bad, you absolutely shouldn't do this, but we all need to take a step back, use that science training, that evidence-based veterinary medicine training that we all have and that we rely on for every other part of our practice, and just apply it to AI as it relates, especially to veterinary radiology.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes weekly, so be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and you want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others that may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you please share the show with them, as this will help us grow our community to reach more and more veterinary professionals. Speaking of which, if you are a veterinary professional and would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send an email to the veterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or perhaps requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent to the Veterinary Project Podcast @gmail.com. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.